Big Dogs laning his Ambessa into Doran's Renekton. This laning phase is known for being quite difficult for Ambessa. In reality, if you play good enough, if you know what you're doing in this lane, you can survive pretty comfortably. So, as with every single VOD that I review, I will let the players do their mistakes first and then I will discuss them. And as with every single one of my VODs as well, I will pause after the first exchange, because this exchange already has a couple of interesting details to it that I think both players might not quite recognize. First of all, Doran is choosing to misposition. He is positioning outside of the wave, extended into Ambessa's side of the lane. So not only he's standing outside of the lane, but he's also standing a lot further up than he should be. This leads to two problems. First of all, Ambessa can easily land her Q2 bonus damage onto Renekton, because Renekton is standing outside of the wave. So that's already a problem. The second problem is that because Renekton is so overextended, if he tries to trade evenly with his Q, like he did in this case, he will inevitably hit the entirety of the wave, or like the entirety of the melee minions from Ambessa's side. Which is bad in this laning phase, because, and now we get to wave management, it's bad because Renekton really cannot go for a second wave crash. Why is that? It's because any better Ambessa player will be able to hold the third wave in front of the turret. She will tank some HP for it, but in return, she gets the fourth wave that meets on her side of the lane, which is very good for Ambessa, because thanks to that, she can only choose to get into short exchanges on her timers, and on the other side, Renekton can never extend any single one of them. So that's one problem. The second problem when it comes to overextending like that is that Dhokla doesn't have to overextend himself when he goes for an exchange onto Renekton. So if you look at his dashes, he actually made a slight mistake when it comes to his second dash, where this is fine, but the Q2 dash backwards is really bad. You can easily dash sideways, you can throw out another auto attack from your passive without overextending too far into the wave. If Renekton was positioning correctly, meaning that he would stand behind his melee minions, then if Dhokla were to do the same thing, then by the time his Q2 is being thrown, Renekton is already deep down all the way here, which effectively means that Dhokla cannot dash further and cast another passive proc. So in summary, Dhokla played this exchange very well, and then Doran just totally misunderstands how to play this part of the laning phase. Now, after this exchange, we have weird minion aggroing, minions being pulled, and then Dhokla doesn't recognize fast enough about what's happening when it comes to the wave. So Dhokla here, after this exchange, chose to not cast his passive for extended period of time onto this minion. He was holding on to it. Then, as his passive went away, is where he locked himself an auto-attack animation. This isn't bad, even of itself, in isolation, but given what is happening to Renekton's wave, where none of those minions from blue side are dying, what it means that Doran has a very huge timer on which he can trade onto Dhokla and not lose anything. Dhokla probably should have recognized that all the way after this exchange right here, that this minion is gonna be targeted the most, and he should have auto-attacked it twice. And yes, Renekton would still be able to go for the exchange, but at least he would not be able to cast his Q, because he just wouldn't have it. So he would be only able to walk up and auto-attack Dhokla once, which might not even be that good for him. And also this gets me into another smaller point about this laning phase. It's not super important because it doesn't give you that much value, but it's something that you should be aware of. Whenever you exchange your Q with Renekton evenly, where your Q has a 14-second cooldown and then Renekton's Q has 7-ish, I think it's 7. Yes, it is 7. Then, because you've exchanged it on the same timer, what it means for you is that after his Q comes off cooldown, your Q on Ambessa is still on a 7-second cooldown. So if you allow him to use it right away, then his next Q, his second Q, will be coming up at the same timer as your Q. But if you make it so that he's not able to use it right away onto you, but instead let's say 3 seconds later, then you will have yourself a 3-second window where you can exchange with your Q when his Q is on cooldown. In this case, because he's able to use his Q right away on this last hit, you will no longer have that timer. Once again, not something to hyperfixate on, just something to be aware of. And then after this Q exchange, what you should expect from a better Ambessa player is to trade onto Renekton with her grass procs. He has this last hit on which Dhokla could have auto-attacked him. There will be another one here, there will be another one here, and maybe even this one. But as you will see, Dhokla will not trade his auto attacks on either one of those, even though those auto attack exchanges are always positive for Dhokla. And this is a mistake that Dhokla will continue to make throughout the game. He'll continue to miss out on those opportunities to find these auto attacks, and therefore Renekton will not have to worry at all about having to choose between a last hit and an even exchange. Instead, he always gets to get the last hit for free, which is just bad laning from Dhokla. I assume he does similar things on other champions, given that he is not doing it in this matchup, which is like one of the most common ideas in this laning phase when you play Grasp into Renekton that has the same range as you. And this is really, really bad if you're a top laner. If there is a lane where you have to exchange auto attacks on your opponent last hits, it's top lane. So that's something that Dhokla definitely needs to work on, as you will see even further into this VOD. Doran has his Q up. He has 3 last hits that he really wants to get with his Q. So he wants to step up right now and then Q through both the minions, so he last hits them, but then also through Dhokla. Dhokla should not be really giving it to him, but at the same time, Dhokla wants to get this minion himself. What he should have done is previously already here, just last hit it. Just last hit it here, and if Doran wants to Q on this timer, then you can then trade onto him yourself. And it's gonna be a totally fine exchange for you as Ambessa. Instead, what he will do is he will cast his Q max range, like this, and then he will take this particular exchange. This exchange is really, really bad by Dhokla. And to understand why, I will explain the theory of like exchanges within this laning phase. So, no matter if it's level 1 exchange or if it's level 2 exchange, Renekton will obviously heal a lot more out of his Q when his Fury is above 50. That's obvious. And this means that you can adjust the way you're trading or the way you approach trades given that. So, on Ambessa, you can go for Q and then auto attack, which is what Dhokla did, or you can go for an auto attack first and then Q. The difference being that this exchange is longer. It's actually long enough so that no matter if Renekton goes for auto attack and Q himself or Q and auto attack, he will only be able to cast either one of these on your auto attack or after your auto attack. But your Q1 will always deal the full damage. So what I'm trying to get at is that by going for auto attack and then Q1, instead of going for Q1 and then auto attack, you make it so that Doran will heal for a lot less damage, and the biggest portion of your damage that comes from your passive and then your Q1 and then Q2 will all be dealt through Renekton, without him being able to lifesteal through any of that. Which is why Dhokla in this exchange should have went for auto attack and Q instead of going for Q and auto attack. Because as you will see once again, because of this exchange, even though Dhokla was able to land his passive and then Q2, where the Q2 was thrown through the minion, so it didn't deal extra damage, Doran healed through most of that. So it wasn't that great for Dhokla in the end. Another thing to mention about this exchange in particular is that Doran is adjusting his positioning very, very well, where he clicks like that, then like that, so that he's standing behind this melee minion during Q2 from Dhokla. That was very clean by him, then auto attack and Q. Everything was perfect from Doran. Here Dhokla goes for a last hit, Doran was threatening nothing pretty much, and now Doran hits level 2. One of the most common mistakes that players will make as Renekton is they will go E level 2, and they will want to abuse their level 2 advantage, and they will just double dash through the entire wave. This leads to both the second wave crashing, more often than not, but another problem of this, actually, is that if Ambessa has her Q up, which in this case Dhokla doesn't, but let's say he did, then the exchange where you go for double E-dash into Q and auto-attack onto Ambessa is actually not winning. Ambessa is gonna win that exchange as long as her Q is up. So your ability to abuse level 2 advantage in this laning phase is actually not as good as it might seem. Which is why my preferred approach, which is what Doran will do in this game as well, is to go W second instead of E. So Dhokla is just being overly respective here. If Doran wants to walk up and then trade here, let's say as Dhokla stands here, if Doran wants to walk up and W and Q, and therefore crash the second wave, then you should be happy with that. Because both you're gonna be able to take a not that bad of an exchange afterwards, because after he throws his W and Q, you can turn around with W and Q of your own. But also, the second wave crash is very, very valuable to you. So in my mind, Dhokla should be clicking a lot further up, and he should be looking to bait out Doran into throwing his Q inside of this wave. Walking up here and throwing the Q onto the range is fine. He could not walk up and last hit it with an auto attack because he doesn't have grasp to take an exchange in case Doran were to try and click on that. And also he would be likely overextending because he would have to walk up all the way here, which is not that great into a champion like Renekton that has a much stronger ability to fight extended exchanges. Then we have the second wave meeting very, very close to Ambessa's turret. One thing that Dhokla should have done here, as the wave is crashing, I've talked about it in my previous top lane review as well, you wanna walk up here and stand here. instead of standing here. Why is that? Because these minions will aggro like that, and they should aggro like this instead. That's because the turret aggro looks something like this. Not exactly, more or less like that. What I'm trying to get at though is that by these minions having to run only this much in order to die, they're a lot more likely to die relative to if you were to pull them like that, because then they would have to run like this, and by that point hopefully your melee minions would block them. So that's like a little min-max that Dhokla probably should have went for, and this min-max would have likely made it so that this melee minion doesn't suicide. When Dhokla Qs this melee minion, once again, I don't like it so much. Unlike the previous range minion, you don't have to overextend in order to get it, and if Doran wants to throw out his W and Q on this timer, you should be happy with that, because you're gonna be able to then trade on those cooldowns onto him, and the exchange is gonna be just good for you. Instead, Dhokla throws out his Q, he misses the minion either way, and then he throws Q2 and dashes sideways. And then Doran makes a very huge mistake in this laning phase, because now what he gave Dhokla is hope. It's hope that Dhokla can now play for an advantage. Given that this clown just wasted his entire fury and his Q in front of you, you should just walk up and trade. You can W in and just trade your passive. Instead, we auto-attack a range minion for fun, and then we go for a last hit. I cannot explain how stupid this is. Like, you should just always trade onto Renekton here. You're applying no pressure in this laning phase by going for last hits at all times and by auto-attacking range minions randomly. You're not getting anything out of it. Walking up and auto-attacking Renekton back, Wing into him, is applying real pressure, because now, every single time he steps up, knowing that Wukong is pathing to him, which he is, he has to worry about Wukong skipping camps. But because you're not poking him at all, because he's staying top lane with full HP, now he can do whatever he wants. Also, because of this previous auto-attack of the range minion, now the same range minion is about to die. I think it was this one or that one, I am not sure. Both of them are about to die, and because of that, Dhokla is throwing out his W like this. Doran should win the lane here. But for whatever reason, he threw his Q first and then W, instead of the other way around, which would always end up dealing infinitely more damage. So there is that, and now we have the third wave crash. Doran going for a little poke. Now, because his Q is on cooldown either way, he's gonna walk up to river, bait out that he's either invading or maybe he is warding. And it was actually pinged on the map that he went for a ward. And now we have another Q being thrown under turret onto Dhokla. Because the third wave crash was a very highly stacked up wave, the fourth wave still ended up meeting closer to Dhokla's side of the lane rather than middle of the lane. What it means for Renekton, and I think he recognized that, is that he needs to pull the wave up and then play through this bush. Normally, if this fourth wave was meeting in neutral, in the middle of the lane, you would pull the wave down and then play through this side. But because the wave meets closer to Dhokla's side of the lane, you have to pull it up. Doran does this to some extent, and now what he should do is just play in front of the wave on Ambessa's last hits and take exchanges. However, you should not play on last hits like this. This is too much. Just give it to Dhokla. Just give it to him. You wasted his Q, that's fine, but you should be clicking back right now. But he isn't clicking back. Instead, he throws out his W and Q on a dogshit fucking timer. Because once again, Ambessa is just going to stomp you right afterwards. If Dhokla is good at the game, he's Wing it right now, Eing to the side, and then throwing out his passive, which in turn means that Doran is losing about this much HP. Let's see what happens. I assume he was expecting Xin to be topside because he warded this bush, but then on the other hand, why would Xin be topside on this timer? Because Xin is not gonna be diving you on the fourth wave. Xin doesn't finish his clear in 3 minutes, and then most importantly, if Xin is gonna dive you on any timer, it's gonna be the fifth wave. So I don't know why he would be here at the same time. So it doesn't make sense why Dhokla did not trade more aggressively here, including now, by the way. Like, Dhokla can still walk up on either one of these last hits and throw his passive out. Like, he can still play the game. Even now, he can walk up and not attack him. But instead, he's Eing max range, and he's playing very, very scared. Because of this Doran W and Q usage, now we have the fifth wave meeting insanely close to Ambessa's turret, to the point where you have a hard time accessing the range minions. And by the way, if Dhokla took a little bit better exchanges before, like with his auto attacks, like actually playing on Renekton's cooldowns properly, throwing out his passive, now Doran would be, let's say, would have this much HP left, and he would actually struggle hard pushing these minions, because every single time he wants to walk up and throw out his Q to push these minions, he has to think what happens if Ambessa turns on that. and then Ambessa pokes him down to, let's say, this much HP. Like, is he still capable of diving Ambessa at that point? I have no idea, but you will never find out if you never try to play the game properly, if you never try to take exchanges. You're just gonna be slowly bleeding out, which is what happened in this game. Another point to mention, I don't know if I mentioned that clear enough, but here, you're not supposed to trade like that as Renekton. If this means suicides, fuck it, okay? Who cares? You can play on any of these minions, any of them. You don't have to play on this one. Playing on this one is beyond stupid, because now you got baited into Wing and Qing inside of the entire wave. Okay, not the entire wave. You threw your Q on the worst minions possible, because you throw them on melee minions and the cannon minion, the minions that are supposed to tank the most, and keep the wave as close to your side of the lane as possible. So this is even worse. Anyways, now we are on the 5th wave. Let's go a little bit forward, and let's see what exactly happens. I hope you can already tell, but Zen is gonna be diving top. Not sure why Wukong did not look to defend against it, given that he was puffing to top. But either way, the dive is about to happen. Dhokla cannot do anything about it. And yet, as you're about to see, Doran almost died. He was left with 87 HP. This 87 HP would be probably a single passive usage. If Dhokla played 5% better when it comes to his passive usage, when it comes to his grasp procs, when it comes to trading on specific timers, he would have ended up living here or maybe even outplaying both of them. To summarize, Dhokla lost his laning phase. He did. He didn't play it well, but Doran did not play it well either. He gave Dhokla a bunch of opportunities to play for an advantage, and because Dhokla was playing very, very passively, it came back to bite him in the ass. So, that'll be it. Bye bye.